ready.
Okay.
We did this, this is Word and Deed. It is a ministry of our church. We are a work in progress. But a couple weeks ago, we did Sing to the Lord. And it seems very appropriate to do it again today. Sing to the King, sing to the Lord, sing to the King. Anyway, it's so appropriate because it talks about He's coming to reign, and that Satan is vanquished and Jesus is king, and that's what we celebrate today. And so I know you all memorized it from a couple weeks ago when we did this. So we would like to invite you guys, if you would like to do the motions with us, or try to do the motions, or just do your own thing if you want. We just want you to praise the Lord. Okay? All right.
King is coming to reign. What must it have been like that first Easter morning? See, I think their Easter that morning was totally different than ours. I mean, I don't think that they had a buffet breakfast in the back that'll ravel Cracker Barrel any day of the week. I think that they, that morning, were so unexpected of what was going to happen, even though Jesus told them what was going to happen. And he didn't tell them just one time or two times or even three times. He told them over and over and over again. In fact, there's one just the night before he was going to die. He shared with his disciples these words found in John chapter 16. Jesus said, "In a little while you will see me no more. And then after a little while you will see me." And some of the disciples said to one another, "What does he mean by saying, 'In a little while you will see me no more, and then after a little while you will see me'? And because I am going to the Father." What does he mean by a little while? We don't understand what he's saying. And Jesus saw that they wanted to ask him this, so he said to them, "Are you asking one another what I meant when I said, 'In a little while you will see me no more, and then after a little while you will see me'? I tell you the truth, you will weep and mourn while the world rejoices. And you will grieve, but your grief will turn to joy. A woman giving birth to a child has pain because her time has come, but when her baby is born, she forgets the anguish because of her joy that a child is born into the world. So with you. Now is your time of grief, but I will see you again, and you will rejoice, and no one will take away your joy." Three things I want to bring up to you very quickly. Three things that Jesus promised in this last word that he would share with his disciples. And the first is, you're going to grieve. You are going to grieve. You see, their grief is different than our grief. Our grief is on the other side of the cross. Ours is on the other side of the tomb. And in fact, I doubt that you have heard a message about the crucifixion of Jesus that it also didn't tie into the resurrection of Jesus. We don't hear about the cross, and with the exception of hearing about the empty grave as well. But that morning, these disciples were full of grief. They had no idea what was coming, even though he told them, "You're going to be full of grief." The disciples had a different kind of grief. But when Jesus was buried, it was very real to them. Real pain, real sadness, real tears, real hearts that were broken. He told them, "You are going to grieve." The second thing he tells them, "But your grief is going to turn to joy." And he said it this way, "In a little while you will see me no more, and then after that you will see me. I tell you the truth," he says, "you will weep and mourn while the world rejoices, and you will grieve, but your grief will turn to joy." And it did. After his resurrection that night, these words are recorded in John chapter 20. On the evening of the first day, that would be Sunday, anniversary of today, when his disciples were together with the doors locked for fear of the Jewish leaders, Jesus came and stood among them. "Peace be with you." And after he said this, he showed them his hands and his sides. And then it says these words, "And the disciples were overjoyed when they saw the Lord." Their grief was turned to joy. Chris is going to show you a picture Now, it is a picture of two young ladies. The 10th anniversary of the event that happened, of which is noticeable around the world, was because these two girls were in an accident. The one on the left is Laura Van Ryn. The one on the right, make sure I've got that right. Yes, the one on the right is Whitney Sarek. They were part of Taylor University. They were going to volunteer along with 7 other people. There were 5 students and 4 leaders. They were going to another town to set up for a talk that the president of the university was giving, and these girls, along with 3 other students, volunteered to go. On the way back from the event, they were involved in a car wreck. A semi-driver, they think, fell asleep, came across the center lane, and hit the van that they were in. Of the 5 students that were in there, all of them died except one. The one on the left, Laura Van Ryn, was said to be alive. Paramedics took her to the hospital. They acknowledged who she was and put her in the hospital. The one on the right, Whitney Sarek, was pronounced dead. Except they had them mixed up. And for the next 5 weeks, because of the injury, there was a head trauma. The one that they thought was Laura, who was actually Whitney, was in a coma. Could not speak, was not awake. The Sareks were beside her for those 5 weeks. Thought that was her daughter. They look similar, do they not? When Whitney wakened after her coma, and as the time of her awakening began, she began to be able to think and to process. They began to notice things that were different about her. And so they gave her a pencil and a piece of paper and asked her to write her name. And she wrote out Whitney. Well, Whitney's mom and dad had already had a funeral for her. The whole campus came to the funerals of all the people that had died. And as Whitney recounts this story 10 years later, she said, "It is odd to be able to know what went on at your funeral." She said, "My little sister, Carly, told everybody on campus that I didn't shower as often as I should have." And she says, "It is not often that you are able to come back and to challenge somebody after your own funeral. But I did." When the parents of Whitney got word, their grief immediately turned to joy. Our daughter is not dead. She is alive. Now, some of you who are astute would say, well, what about Laura's parents who sat beside their daughter? They said for 3 weeks, they never left her side. 3 weeks in the hospital and 2 weeks in recovery. What about her? What about her parents? Now they found out that she's died. Whitney said, they continued to be like a mom and dad to me. They continued on. Even though they had a funeral, they also knew that their daughter was at home with the Lord. The disciples that night of seeing Jesus crucified, going to the place where he was to be buried, knowing that he was now in the grave. On Sunday morning, they see and hear things that Jesus is alive. I can't imagine the emotion that they must have felt that day. He promised them your grief will turn to joy. The last thing that Jesus promised in this passage is this. Now is your time of grief, but I will see you again, and you will rejoice, and no one will take away your joy. There is no one who is going to take away your joy. We sing a song like that, don't we? This joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. This joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. This joy that I have, the world didn't give it to me. The world didn't give it, and the world can't take it away. And they had a joy that could not be taken away. You know what? It can't be taken away from you either. That's the one thing that Jesus promised them that night before he died, that is our promise tonight. See, we don't grieve like they do, and I don't think we have the joy like they do. Our joy is different because we now see the story in its entirety. We see Easter morning as a time of celebration, but not as a time of wondering whether or not he is going to be alive or not, and then to be surprised when he was. Two things about this joy that can't be taken away. Here's the first. The reason it can't be taken away is because Jesus has conquered death and he lives forever. Jesus conquered death and he lives forever. Revelation chapter 1 says this, I am the first and the last. I am the living one. I was dead, and now look, I am alive forever and ever. I hold the keys to death and Hades. Because Jesus conquered death, he'll never die again. He is alive forevermore. And he holds the keys to Hades and death in his hand. The other reason that it can't be taken away from you and it can't be taken away from me is because you and I are bound to live forever as well. Because he lives, I will live with him. Here's what it says. Jesus said at the tomb of Lazarus, I am the resurrection and the life. He who believes in me, though he dies, yet shall he live. And whoever lives and believes in me will never die. Martha, do you believe this? And she said, yes, I believe that you are the Christ. You are the Son of God. You see, in these verses, in verse 16, it says, in a little while you will see me no more, and then you will see me. Same thing in verse 19. Same thing in verse 20. You will see me no more, and then you will see me. But when it gets to verse 22, it says, now is your time of grief, but I will see you again. Not only will you see me, but I will see you. And because that promise that he has made to us, that he is going to see us, then we do not need to fear dying. Someone says it is as though you are closing your eyes here and waking up over there. It's remarkable, is it not? Scripture says that angels will escort us into the presence of the Lord. There you will see him, and he will see you. Everything will be changed. Everything will be as it should be. Here's a song that some friends of mine sang. I actually called them yesterday. They've been here. And I said, Steve, hey, what's going on tomorrow? I'd like you to come and sing at church. It was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. He said, I don't think that's going to happen. He said, if you'd have called a couple of days ago, I'd have told the pastor here that we had to cancel our singing at church, and then I was going to come up and be with you, but you waited a couple of days too late. I knew that wasn't true either. But they sang a song. They sang a song that you have heard. And it's a song, I think, that comes with the excitement of knowing that first Easter morning. And so, Chris, do you have that?
We knew he was dead. It is finished, he said. We had watched as his life just ebbed away.
Then we all stood around till the guards took him down. Joseph begged for his body that day.
It was late afternoon when we gathered to the tomb, wrapped his body and sealed up the grave.
So I know how you feel. His death was so real. But please listen and hear what I say.
I've just seen Jesus. I tell you, he's alive. I've just seen Jesus. Our precious Lord alive.
And I knew
Oh, I knew
he really saw me too.
he really saw me too.
As if till now
Oh, I never leave. All that I've done before won't matter anymore. I've just seen Jesus, and I'll never be the same again. It was his voice she first heard, those kind and gentle words, asking what was her reason for cheer.
and I sobbed in despair. My Lord is not there.
He said, "Child, it is I am here. I've just seen Jesus. I tell you, he's alive.
Praise the Lord.
We didn't have to worry whether or not we would see him that morning. We know today that we're going to see him. You see, they were thinking and wondering. We know with certainty that it's coming. And so today we worship and we praise a little different. Oh yeah, today is not a normal day. Today is a good day. Today is a day of celebrating Easter, but every day is Easter for a Christian. But today is a little different. Some of you get up a little earlier on Easter Sunday morning. You sleep a little less on the night before, if at all. 5:15 for me this morning. I didn't know there were two 5:15s. You know, we do that for the glory of God. We come and we say, we worship you, the risen King. We do that by serving him. We have a new computer. They just came in this week, and Andrew Kirshner got it out of the box and changed everything over. Chris plugged in all the stuff that's going on because we needed it really for this week. Why'd they do that? Because it's Easter. Jesus is risen. Some of you stayed yesterday after practice and set up all these tables and put the tablecloths on them and all those things. Why'd you do that? Because it's Easter. Jesus is risen. Some of you have volunteered to bring in things and to cook things, donated food items, and we're about ready to eat them in just a minute. Why'd you do that? It's because it's Easter and Jesus is risen. This is Linda's favorite holiday, you know that. She can't hardly sleep at night. Loves this day and the day before. She has turned Easter into a 2-day holiday. Why is that? It's because it's Easter and Jesus is risen. The table out in the front, out there, Joanna Bowman put together. Why? Why does it look so good? Because it's Easter and Jesus is risen. And the people who are coming through the 10:30 service and the people who are here now are going to hear about a wonderful opportunity that we have to celebrate marriage. Judy May was until just a little bit ago going to handle nursery all by herself. Why is that? It's because it's Easter. And Jesus is risen. And it's a way to be able to say, Lord, I serve you. I love you. We have Easter lilies in the front. Barb Casey brought in. Why? Because it's Easter and Jesus is risen. The church is cleaned. Why? Because Renee has cleaned it for Easter, because Jesus has risen. In just a little bit, the cantata is going to come and they're going to sing and give praises to the Lord. Why? Because it's Easter and Jesus has risen. See, we don't have to be astonished as what happened on that first Easter morning. We can just celebrate and look forward to the time when he's coming again. I'm so glad to be able to worship on this side of not only the cross, but also the tomb. And today, if you go over there, you don't have to wonder whether or not Jesus is going to rise from the grave. Because the tomb is open, and you can look in, you can walk in, and you can see he's not there. He is risen.